You wanna know who I am? Folks call me the Bone Man, ain't my real name, but it's the one that stuck. Tonight on Requiem Radio, we return to the Charleston Opera House for Act 2 of our tale. A night when art, ambition, and the dead collided head-on. If you heard part 1, you know the mummy stepped forward, now we find out what it did next. This is part 2, the fall of Charleston.
When the mummy stepped from its pyramid during O Patria Mia, the audience gave it a round of applause they would come to regret. Folks craned their necks to see the clever trick, delighted by the illusion. But illusions don't bleed. The mummy's next motion shattered the line between clever trick and nightmare. A towering papier-mâché obelisk toppled into the footlights, bursting glass and throwing sparks like flares across the stage. A chorus boy screamed as a shard ripped his tunic red. The applause faltered, then died. The mummy moved toward the baritone pharaoh with a precision far too deliberate for any stagecraft. One shove knocked the man backward, skull hitting the boards with a crack that echoed through the hall. A growing pool of blood spread around his lifeless head on the floor. Before the soprano could run, the creature caught her, lifted her like a doll, and literally crushed her. Her jeweled crown rolled across the stage. Panic erupted. Some actors fled into the orchestra pit, crushing instruments beneath their weight. Violins and brittle bones snapped in two. Smoke rose as gas lamps shattered against the scenery. And in the audience, terror became stampede. Children were torn from mothers' arms, folks tripped and vanished under the crush of bodies. A university professor clutched his chest and fell, trampled by the same students who'd once applauded him. People jumped from balconies, some breaking legs, others necks. Shattered windows offered escape to those desperate enough to crawl through the jagged glass. The mummy strode calmly through it all, each movement careful, purposeful, linen-soaked red. And backstage, Malcolm Green, poor frightened Malcolm, remembered the one thing he still held, the papyrus. He grabbed it, ran onto the stage, and began the incantation. The symbols writhed like snakes as he read them aloud. For a moment, the mummy froze. Its head turned slowly toward Malcolm. He shouted the words louder, desperate, mangling syllables as he fumbled through lines half remembered. The wing lights flickered. The stage seemed to tilt. The mummy reached him, seized him, lifted him from the boards. With one wrench it tore the scroll apart. Malcolm's ribs followed. His last breath never made it out of his throat. When the papyrus drifted to the floor in tatters, every hope of binding the creature died with it. What happened next became legend. The mummy, linen dripping, turned from the carnage. It walked through destroyed scenery, pulled down curtains as it passed, and stepped out into the humid Charleston night, vanishing into jasmine-scented darkness. The aftermath was a massacre. Blood mixed with smoke and lamp oil. Bodies filled aisles, boxes, stairwells. Survivors whispered in terror about what they saw. But newspapers called it a collapse, a panic, a freak accident. The Charleston Dramat Society dissolved in shame. Malcolm Green's name faded into footnotes if mentioned at all. But theater folk, superstitious as cats, still whisper. They say whenever Aida is staged in America, something shifts in the wings, curtains rustle with no breeze. A faint scrape echoes behind the flats. And during the final duet, if the soprano reaches high enough, some swear they hear a dry, rasping breath keeping time with Verdi's music. As if linen were tightening, as if something ancient was listening, as if Charleston's mummy was waiting for its next cue.
You've been listening to Requiem Radio, where music bleeds into the supernatural. And that was The Mummy of Aida, Part 2, The Fall of Charleston. Some stories end, some stories linger, but a mummy don't end, it waits. And maybe next time you're in an opera house and feel something cold drift by your seat, you'll remember Charleston. Ain't gonna be no mo tonight. Y'all rest easy, and don't let the dark drive you home.